Morning, everyone. So I thought we would discuss Rishi Sunak's already having a bad week. It's Tuesday morning, and it's absolutely terrible to say he's had weeks and weeks of concerted effort from his client media to suggest, he's taking the Tories on the road to glory again. It's all gone absolutely disastrously wrong. I'm not even going to talk about Dominic Raab or anything like that, because that is last week. This week, I'm just going to put up a couple of, I'm going to go over a few things. So first of all, the first thing to note is Rishi Sunak himself is under investigation. We found that out last week, but it's now got a little bit more serious for him because his investigation has been expanded. Now, last week, I don't know whether people were aware, in PMQ, because you'd think Keir Starmer would bring that up in PMQs, but he wasn't allowed to. I'm guessing it's because of PERDA, the period leading up to an election where, there's certain things you're not allowed to say. But it turns out that, and I don't know what he said, but Rishi Sunak seems to have said something untoward because the Standards Commissioner has now expanded the investigation because Rishi Sunak has apparently been talking about the original inquiry, which is not allowed to. I'll quote from the thing here. It says, members must not disclose details in relation to any investigation by the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards, except when required by law to do so or authorised by the Commissioner. So, and this speaks to the fact that Rishi Sunak ultimately does not know what he's doing, even on a basic level. Now, Rishi Sunak has only been an MP since 2015, much like Keir Starmer. There's quite a few people at the top of politics now who have not been MPs for very long. So you can understand maybe they're not familiar with absolutely everything, but they should have good advisors. As soon as Rishi Sunak found out that he was under investigation, he should have had his advisors telling him exactly what he needed to do. And that is obviously not happened. So we can sort of see that Rishi Sunak, and I've said this before many times, he's clearly not got competent advisors around him. So then we look at a couple of things. I'm going to point out a couple of newspaper headlines today from friendly newspapers, the Daily Express and the Daily Mail. Now, I want to point out a couple of things. So first of all, the Daily Express here are saying a pledge from our PM to hearten Britain's women. Now, I haven't actually read the article. I don't know what it is. But I'll tell you what is interesting. At the moment, there is a bill supposedly passing through Parliament, but it's going to get blocked. It's passed through the House of Commons. In theory, the government have presented this bill, and it will strengthen women's rights in the workplace. And you think to yourself, that's unusual. Because if I think to the last 13 years of Tory rule, what have the Conservatives actually done to enhance people's rights? Plenty of things they've done to remove our rights. What have they done to enhance them? And the only thing you can think of really is gay marriage. But Liberal Democrats will say, well, actually, that was the Liberal Democrats. It's when they were in coalition. But that's it. That's all I can think of. Honestly, that's all I can think of. So then you think there's a bill going through Parliament where it's going to strengthen women's rights in the workplace. For example, women who have to work at like business conferences and they're getting, they're being told to wear like inappropriate clothing, and they have to put up with being fondled by people there, which is wrong. And this bill is supposed to like strengthen their rights in that regard and other regards. And you think, well, this is interesting. The Conservatives doing this. It's not going through because a load of Tory peers, a load of Conservatives in the House of Lords are wasting lots of time piling amendment after amendment after amendment onto it so that it will run out of time and it will just fizzle out. The bill is being timed out. So it's not going to complete just because it'll run out of time. And Rishi Sunak will not, he could push it. He could get his shoulder behind it. It's his own peers, not MPs, but members of the House of Lords in his own party that are stopping it. And that's what he's done. This is a cynical move to make it look like so that they could announce this bill and get all the plaudits for it. But then it's going to go away. And it reminds me a little bit about the sewage, the raw sewage, when that started being dumped in massive amounts in 2021. And the government were going to legislate to allow water companies to do more of it. And there was a huge backlash, right? And then they said, oh, no, we'll put these protections in. And then the Owen Paterson scandal came along. Everyone was distracted. They removed those protections, which is why we've now got loads in there. And that is also why this week Labour are pushing that. I think Keir Starmer is going to be talking about in PMQs tomorrow. Labour are pushing the sewage dumping very hard. They're going to introduce a bill of their own to try and deal with it, which, of course, the Conservatives will block so that Labour can then say they don't care about the sewage dumping. But that's the Express. Now, the Daily Mail is another one. This is actually explicitly attacking the Prime Minister. It says business blasts Rishi's own goal over tourist tax. Now, for those who don't know what this is, yesterday, so there's been quite a few business conferences which Rishi Sunak has been invited to. And since he's been Prime Minister, he's dodged them all. He's sent other ministers. The government's been represented. But he's also sent a video recording. So, I'll record a video and I'll send it there so they can't ask me any questions. Well, yesterday he turned up to an event called Business Connect. And he was, so you think, he's now confident enough to answer questions, is he? Is he? But the thing is, he wasn't. Although he's turned up and although he took questions, he didn't really seem to answer them. This is what, so one of the most notable ones was someone who, CEO of Burberry or something, it's a huge clothing label, basically, the biggest in the country, really. But interestingly, they have, as you'd expect of a massive, multi-billion-pound company, they have outlets in other countries around Europe. And what they have been saying is, in fact, I can read a couple of quotes. They were saying that it's described as the UK's largest fashion brand. They have analysed sales data across Europe, across all their outlets in Paris, Milan, Munich, as well as in Britain. And what they showed was in Britain, the recovery, the post-pandemic recovery they were seeing was way weaker in Britain. And he said, it's no secret why this is. It's because of what's happened is the government have started, you have VAT on certain things. But if you're a tourist, if you come into the country and you buy something for which there's VAT on it, you can get a refund when you take it out of the country. You can apply for a refund, get your VAT back, right? And lots of countries do that. We did that. We don't do that anymore. So, and this is what the Daily Mail are going on about with the tourist tax. So what it means is goods are now effectively more expensive. So people are less likely to travel here, buy things to take them back because it will now actually be a lot more expensive. Whereas someone in this country could go to, say, Paris to buy something, leave, and apply to have their sort of sales tax removed from it. And he was saying that this was a big, having a huge impact. But what is certainly having an impact, obviously he's not proved that it's down to that. What is certainly having an impact is that Britain is doing something very different to other European countries, which means that a company that is based in Britain but has outlets in other countries is noticing that it's the British sales that are stalled. Now, what could that be? But essentially he got absolutely blasted because what Rishi Sunak had to do. So this guy was saying to Sunak, look, there's a problem with this issue. You need to deal with it. And Rishi Sunak, you'd have expected him to do one of two things: either to say, actually, we are looking at I think you've got a point, or to defend the current policy. It's one of those two things. You either say, no, the policy is right, I think you've got it wrong there, and he explains himself, or you say, yes, we are sort of thinking about that. We may have, we are doing a review of that. You're quite right. But he didn't say either of those things. What he basically said is, I'm not going to answer your question. So he's finally turned up to a live event, the Prime Minister of the Party of Business, and he's gone to these business leaders who've asked him difficult questions about how he's handling the economy, basically saying, we don't think your policies are right. And his response is to say, I'm not going to answer that. Bear with me. I'm not going to answer you. It was absolutely ridiculous. What's the saying? Perception is everything in politics. Yeah, I say this a lot. Perception is absolutely everything in politics. But as I said, Rishi Sunak, he cannot even get the Daily Mail to come up. I mean, the Daily Express are trying to come up with a positive headline for him, even though it's an absolute nonsense. The Daily Mail can't even be bothered. Obviously, the Daily Mail is they will always attack anything that looks like a tax that they don't want to see. And another thing to just look at here. So have a little look at this. So one's Conservative, one's Labour here. So the Conservative one is like a press release. So there's two political games going on this week. There's one from Labour and one from the Conservatives. The Conservatives are attacking Labour for blocking their illegal migration bill, which of course is illegal. And they're trying to say, oh, Labour have got, like, it says on this thing, Labour have 3 days to back the Stop the Boats bill. And then underneath it, I may have to move my head slightly to the side, it says, Greg Hands MP, this is the Tory party chair, Labour have 48 hours to stop the boats bill. Now, this is the same, I haven't cut this together, this is the same release. So at the top, it's saying they've got 3 days. Down below, it's saying they've got 48 hours. I think Priti Patel's done the math on that one. Do you think? Priti Patel worked it out. Greg's thinking it was like, how many hours in 3 days, Priti? I think it's 48. But anyway. Oh, yes, someone's mentioned the Unicorn Kingdom. Thank you very much. Yeah, so at that Business Connect thing yesterday, Rishi Sunak was trying to big up our investment in Silicon Valley, which, okay, maybe that's up, maybe. But he's talked about this initiative being called Unicorn Kingdom. It's like, did someone think that it was a poke in the eye to Remainers or something? Or did they just not realize how ridiculous that looks? But the other, so that's one political game going on this week. So the Conservatives are trying to say that Labour are blocking the plans to stop the boats, which of course the plans don't stop the boats. Whereas Labour are countering with their sewage thing. So they're presenting this bill to deal with the excessive amount of sewage. And people will notice this. Anyone's going around the country, particularly to the seaside, you will notice that there are some times when you just can't go to the beach or you can't go into the sea. Rivers are excessively polluted. Even some Tory newspapers are on top of this. So Labour are presenting this bill as this will deal with the problem, and they'll put it to the Conservatives. Either you back this bill or you do one of your own, and we will support it. And the Conservatives have then got a choice. What we know they're going to do is they're going to come up with some reason why they can't back the Labour bill. But then Labour can say to them, so why don't you present your own bill and we will back that then? And they'll have no answer to that. And that's actually a serious issue to a lot of people around the country, including Conservative heartlands. And then I'll give a couple of comments before I come on to the sort of coup de grace here. Oh, Ellen Rose is there saying, I saw Met Police running ahead of Sunak's car in the video. It was like the arrival of authoritarian dictator. It was ridiculous. So for those who don't know, someone said it was something to do with the London Marathon. I don't know. I really don't know. But Rishi Sunak's car, you know, it's driving through London. It's got an escort. Of course it does. That's just standard. But the escort was like several dozen police officers on foot or on a bicycle. His escort was like some police officers on bicycles and a load of them on foot as well. People were picking on one of them because he obviously was struggling to keep up. I mean, I'm not into picking on police officers for that reason. But it did look ridiculous. I mean, normally you shouldn't need much. You have a couple of motorbikes in a police car, don't you, to escort him through? For half a dozen police officers at most. This was dozens. This must have been 2 or 3 dozen. And you just think, how much is that costing? Really? How much is that costing? But anyway, Sarah's saying, I thought John Crace had invented the unicorn thing until I Googled it. No, I heard Rishi Sunak say it. I've been watching a few clips of his thing yesterday. Mortifying that our government actually produced this for international audiences. This is what I mean. I go back to my start point. His advice is truly awful. And I've tried to say it in the past as well. And then Rishi Sunak's had a bit of a golden period recently where it looked like the polls are tightening and things like that, and it's all looking better for him. But in actual fact, his advisors are truly stunningly awful. Truly awful. But last one now. So there's a poll come out. Now, Redfield and Wilton do these polls quite regularly. I'm going to have to find so that I can see them in larger form, because I won't actually be able to see it on my thing. Where is it? There we go. Now, they do these polls. My head's in the way, sorry, but I will go down them. And they do various polls that do heads to heads. Now, normally I would say YouGov and Ipsos Mori are the best pollsters for looking at stuff, but they don't do things like this very often. Redfield Wilson do it a lot. And they've got heads to head. Now, Keir Starmer's, because what's important is what people will keep saying with Labour being ahead. Yeah, but Ed Miliband's Labour were ahead a few months before the general election, and then he lost it really badly. So the same thing can happen. What people need to understand is under the bonnet, or under the hood, if you're watching from America, you're probably not watching from America because it's like your bedtime, but well, you might be watching it not live. You need to look at certain breakdowns. Certain things are really important. First is the head-to-head between the leaders. Ed Miliband, I don't think ever got ahead of David Cameron on that. The second is on the economy. Ed Miliband was never ahead. In fact, Labour itself, I don't think were ever ahead on the economy. So although Labour got a lead in terms of voting intention a few months before the 2015 general election, they never had it on those crucial areas in terms of the leadership head-to-head or the economy. Whereas Labour have had a lead over the Conservatives on the economy for some time. But what is also important is the leader. Now, Rishi Sunak has been up until now considered more competent with the economy than Keir Starmer, which I think is mental when you consider that Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor that, raised taxes to the highest levels in generations. And he did that because the economy was doing so poorly. And he's also the one that has lost us tens of billions of pounds in fraud. He cost us £11 billion just in failing to insure a bond buying scheme he had. He was told to, and he didn't. But anyway, now Starmer has flipped ahead of him on the economy. So I'm going to go down the list in terms of leads. Because Starmer leads on 15 of these 17. Cares about people like me. Starmer leads by 17. Can bring British people together. Starmer leads by 15. Represents change. Starmer leads by 4. It'd be a bit ridiculous if the leader of the opposition didn't represent change to more people. But then, to be fair, because the Conservatives have got a newish leader, people can sort of think, well, maybe the new leader of the party that's been around for 13 years can bring change. That's just unfortunate. But Starmer's leading by that on 14. Understands the problems afflicting the UK. 12. Starmer leads by 12. Willing to work with other parties when possible. Starmer leads by 10. I mean, that's a no. I mean, who can think the Conservatives will work with other parties? Because they don't. They didn't even do that when they had a minority government. Prioritises the environment. Starmer leads by 10. Stands up for the interests of the UK. Starmer by 8. Listens to those who disagree with him. Starmer by 7. Tells the truth. Starmer by 7. Keeps promises. Starmer by 6. Again, you should lead on that because you haven't had an opportunity to break a promise when you're in opposition, to be fair. Is creative. Starmer by 5. Is a strong leader. Starmer by 3. That's disappointing for me, particularly, I don't know when this field work was actually, to be fair. But when you consider the last few days and how quickly each of them dealt with a wayward colleague, it's mindless to me that although Starmer has a lead, it's not a big lead in terms of who's the stronger leader. Is pragmatic. Starmer by 2. Can build a strong economy. Starmer by 2. And also bear in mind, Labour do lead the Conservatives, and they have done for some time under Johnson, Truss and Sunak. So the Labour lead on the economy has been well established, but now Starmer leads Sunak. And I think as well, as people start to see that although Sunak's talking a good game on the economy, as they start to see that they're not going to see the benefit in their pocket, I think that should hopefully grow. And then if you ask yourself, so what are the 2 areas, because my head's covering them, what are the 2 areas where Sunak beats Starmer? Is in good physical and mental health. And you think, well, Sunak's younger and he looks trim and all the rest of it. Okay, but Starmer keeps himself fit. But it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, do they both look healthy and fit? Yes, they do. So that's not going to be a vote swinger. Can work well with foreign leaders. Now, again, this is a funny one. Obviously, it doesn't matter whether I say I agree or disagree. Starmer, when he does talk with foreign leaders, which he does, it's not going to be featured in the news very often. Whereas whenever Rishi Sunak has a meeting with a foreign leader, of course it will. So it's natural to suppose people will think that because they don't really know with Starmer. But also, I would say for a lot of people, the focus, particularly when the country is doing really badly, the focus will be on domestic issues, not so much dealing with world leaders anyway, even though that is incredibly important. But anyway, right, let's go through some comments. Knowing the trouble he has paying in a petrol station, maybe they were there to push it. So this refers to Sunak when he tried to do a photo op. He went to Sainsbury's, I think it was, and asked for an employee's car so he could be filming it up with petrol, because obviously he doesn't like, it wouldn't work with his own car. So he needed someone's ordinary car. And then he tried paying for it, and he couldn't work out how to use a credit card to pay for that and a can of cola. The Chancellor of the Exchequer didn't understand money or how to pay for things. When the election comes, Sunak's going to be so scared of the public, it'll be hilarious. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, won't it? It'll be interesting to see, because we haven't really seen him go out and about in terms of, like, we've seen him go out a little bit with the local elections, but it's mostly been going around with the local council candidates, and you haven't seen him addressing large groups of the public. So we will see. We'll see how it is. When it comes to the general election, he is actually going to have to get out and about. So we'll see there. But we will be interested to see, because at the moment, the polling for the local elections, which is next week, obviously, you know, there's going to be a lot of intense campaigning between now and then. And I will also say that polling for the local elections is incredibly difficult. It really is much more difficult than for general elections, and that's tricky enough with first past the post. But the polling does not look good for the Conservatives. They're currently saying they expect to lose 1,000 seats. Now, that to me makes me think they actually expect to lose about 800. And that way, so if they say they're going to lose 1,000, then they lose 800, they get to say it's a victory. Wouldn't it be awful if they lost more than 1,000? Because then that would mean they lost more than even they expected to lose. That would mean that they must have, because we can come back to them and say, well, hang on a minute. If 2 weeks before you said you thought you might lose 1,000 seats and you lost 1,200, then that means you did worse. That means your campaign must have been terrible. And that will trigger the infighting in the Conservative Party again. Do we have a wild Daily Blasé in here? Starmer versus Sunak head-to-heads will be fun. They will absolutely. I mean, you know, people keep, you know, the Tory media keep trying to say, oh, Sunak's doing much better in PMQs now. He's absolutely not. All he's got is his MPs, you know, cheering behind him. That's all, you know. But when he does the live TV debates, he's not going to have that. He's going to have an audience, and some of them will be Conservative voters, but they're not going to be there braying and cheering for the sake of it. They'll only cheer when they hear something they like. And he's not going to have a lot that they're going to like. And yes, next year's budget is going to be a pork barrel budget. He's going to loosen the purse string. He's going to make out like they always do. Oh, we've had tough times, but now we've come to the end of it. You need to vote for us, otherwise Labour will wreck it all. We'll get all that again. But ultimately, he's going to be absolutely destroyed in those TV debates, because he isn't very good. He doesn't have command of his brief. Yes, he's better than Johnson and Truss, but he works harder, but he still doesn't understand things. He just has a fundamental lack of understanding. He's got no experience of this sort of thing. Keir Starmer has been the country's top prosecutor. He's very good at one-to-one engagements like this, and you know, and laying traps for people and pointing out lies and destroying people's arguments. You know, Sunak hasn't had any of that. And it shows as well. So although he's better than Johnson and Truss, and he'll look more plausible than both of them, he's going to be absolutely destroyed. But as I say, he's had a nice, easy few weeks. And, you know, it's been reflected in the polls a little bit. But even then, all he's really done is there's still a bigger gap between Labour and the Conservatives compared to when Boris Johnson was kicked out of the airlock. And now, and people will, will go, oh, it's going to tighten, it's going to tighten. Keir Starmer's in real trouble. Even the guy who go, oh, people in Labour should be worried. It's like, why? Why? He's had a few weeks where Labour weren't allowed to say very much because it's been the Easter recess, where there wasn't much reporting on that, and where the Tory media were just painting this positive picture. But people aren't feeling it, and they're not going to feel it by the end of the year, and they're not going to feel it next year, And as I say, we're now seeing it. These polls are a bit of a tilt. I'll be interested to see what the next week's polls are like for other pollsters. But anyway, there it is. We'll see if we've got another couple really quick ones at the end. Only thing that might save Sunak is if they have a leaders' debate, as all parties will be aiming at their favourites, which is Labour. Not necessarily, actually, because what they'll like to do is attack the record. I think you'll find that a lot of them will be gunning for Sunak as well. Yes, some will also want to, but remember, they don't get very long. They get about 2 minutes to say something. So they'll all be gunning mostly for Sunak because, and I'll tell you another thing, the SNP might be a little bit different because in a lot of seats in Scotland, it will be between the SNP and Labour. So that's fair enough. But in most seats around the country, if you talk about for Lib Dems and for the Greens and for Plaid, for example, and for Reform UK, because they'll probably be there, they're competing with the Conservatives, not Labour, in most seats as well. And the Conservatives are they're the low-hanging fruit anyway to attack because they've got the recent record, which is not a very good record. But anyway, there we go. Thanks very much for coming on. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. These live streams go on each weekday morning, Monday to Friday, 9:30 UK time. And also don't forget, if you want to support the channel further, there are links in the description to Patreon, and you could just join this channel if you wished. But thanks very much. Have a good morning, have a good day, and until next time, I will see you later.